Coming up, first flight of a new kit jet.
And better landings through technology. We'll show you a useful tool.
And flying over Pittsburgh. AOPA Live this week begins in just a moment.
Lightspeed Zulu 3, the most preferred, most awarded headset in general aviation. With decades of providing unsurpassed value and unsurpassed functionality, pilots all over the world love flying with Zulu 3. Try Zulu 3 today, risk-free, with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Lightspeed, fly with Zulu.
This is AOPA Live This Week with Tom Haynes and Warren Morningstar filling in for Alyssa Cobb.
Well, there's a very new light jet. A new entry in the single-engine jet category has flown for the first time.
The Stratus 716X is a complete redesign, according to the company, and the folks in the small Redmond, Oregon company are pretty pumped about their multi-role, very light jet.
I'm used to first flights with a lot of squawks afterwards, but this first flight really went like clockwork. I think big part of the reason it's really our second aircraft we have now had a first flight on as a company.
The 716X was developed from the 714. They look pretty much the same, but the 716X is 4.5 feet longer and 300 pounds lighter and about 2 inches wider. The cabin can seat 6 or be rapidly reconfigured to an air ambulance or cargo configuration. The Stratus 716X will first be offered as a kit, but that's just a stepping stone to a fully certificated aircraft.
Producing kits is really a step towards that. But the entire company from the beginning has been founded with a goal of taking this aircraft into certification. So to have the handling characteristics, we have designed it to meet all Part 23 requirements.
The Stratus 716X certificated version is expected to cost about $3.5 million. So Warren, I think you and Beth would look pretty good in that. What do you think? You could do that in your spare time. Build a jet. What do you think?
Yeah, build the jet. It's interesting. The 714, a lot of us saw it at Oshkosh a few years ago, and what they did was they talked to the customer or people who might buy it, and people said, "Nah, it's not big enough. We want room for 6. We want a little bit better performance." So they went back and changed things a bit. And I asked them, I said, "So are you competing with the Vision jet?" And they sort of smiled and said, "Nah, we think we're more in line with the Honda jet or something similar because it is faster and will fly higher than the Vision jet."
Yeah. Well, good luck to them. As we know from other projects, it's a long road to certification of an airplane like that, but hope they're successful because it certainly looks like an interesting design.
Well, yeah, and they're following the same model as another Oregon company did, about starting with a kit-built aircraft and then leading to a certificated aircraft.
Yeah, Epic Aircraft from that same neighborhood up there in Redmond, Oregon. And so, yeah, that's a hotbed of aircraft development, that's for sure.
It is interesting.
Hey, and speaking of new airplanes, there's a new Cub on the block, and boy, it's a fierce one. American Legend Aircraft is offering the MOAC, or Mother of All Cubs. It's a backcountry edition of their popular Legend Cub. Engine options up to 208 horsepower are available. Is that still a Cub? There's also slats on the leading edge and 40-degree flaps from the wing root to the balanced ailerons, and it all sits on top of a Shock Monster front suspension. Find out more about this beast of a kit on legend.aero.
Well, here's a question for you. How can something invented by a California surfer help improve your landings? Dave Hirschman shows us as he helps AOPA Air Safety Institute boss Richard McSpadden learn to tame a Cessna 180 tail dragger in a sporty crosswind.
Okay, so yesterday was a blustery, gusty day in Maryland, and Richard's flying this new to him Cessna 180, which is a really challenging tailwheel airplane to operate. And so to get comfortable in the airplane, I just wanted to use this fantastic tool that we've got in the form of these tiny point-of-view cameras. So we attached several point-of-view cameras to the airplane, had Richard go out and fly in these really challenging conditions. Let's go ahead and watch this this first landing.
Winds, please. 330 at 17, gust 20. Thank you.
All right, there's 65. And for the player.
Yeah, so a little early, but you can see really manageable. You see left of center line, so that was pretty much what I remembered from it. So I think the two takeaways there are, I hit before I was really ready, and then also I have a tendency in the 180 not to flare with that thing, with that yoke all the way in my lap. I'll have just a little more authority left, and as you tried to help me understand, that's a bad place to be in the 180. So so that probably contributed.
Okay, but as far as how you remember it and what you saw, they're pretty much aligned.
Yeah, except for that, on here it looks like I bounced probably 2 or 3 times, and remembering it a day later, I thought it was only one bounce that I powered up a little bit and then settled down, but it looks like even in the settle down I bounced a couple more times. Yeah.
You can read more about how Dave uses point-of-view cameras as a teaching aid in the August issue of AOPA Pilot Magazine, and you can find more of that video on our YouTube channel. And you know, Tom, Dave was always doing interesting things, but he also used the point-of-view camera to teach, I think it was one of our colleagues, how to land a Mooney, because, the pilot just did not realize how nose high an attitude a Mooney has to have in order to land the mains first, and using that POV camera on the tail really demonstrated where things needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that a lot in sports too, you know, tennis and that sort of thing. Everybody using cameras to allow you to see what it is that you're doing and make better decisions as a result. So the point of view cameras on our airplanes and inside our airplanes are actually making an interesting change in how it is that we teach people to fly. So it'll be fun to watch how all that plays out over time.
Yeah, and the GoPros and the Garmin Verbs are relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, they are. It's pretty affordable and getting more and more capable all the time, better quality images and better connectivity and that sort of thing. And, you know, speaking of Garmin, they're kind of bummed like the rest of us that there's no AirVenture this year. And so they're offering you the opportunity to still learn about their products through a virtual Oshkosh. On their website, they have a series of educational webinars and product demos planned. That'll run the week of July 20th through the 25th. And it's almost like checking out their exhibit in Wisconsin.
And another aviation event won't happen this year because of the coronavirus. The 2020 R.A. Bob Hoover Trophy presentation won't happen this year. Well, the ceremony was originally scheduled for March in Washington, D.C. We pushed it to October, and the NBAA convention in Florida, hoping the pandemic would have been tamped down by then. That event was canceled, too. The 2020 R.A. Bob Hoover Award would have been presented to legendary aircraft designer Burt Rutan during a reception in historic Terminal A at Reagan Washington National Airport.
Now, some congratulations are in order. AOPA's popular podcast, Hangar Talk, just published its 100th episode. Hosts David Toulis and Ian Twombly shoot the breeze about flying with all sorts of interesting people. For the Centennial cast, they had on the boss. AOPA President Mark Baker was talking about the current state of general aviation and what the future might hold.
General aviation is an answer and a solution to a lot of people during this crisis and afterwards, because I think some people will be concerned about getting on, going through airports and reduce crowds for some period of time to come. And general aviation is one of the solutions that gets people around this country in a very unique way and a viable way. So near term, I am seeing transactions, and our legal services is busy with 50% of its calls every day coming in with how do I buy an aircraft, and here's the contract I want to put through. So we're seeing a big change in the GA population near term. So as we think about 5 years out and beyond, I'm very excited about electric, particularly what it can mean for the training environment. You know, eFlyer is an example, still saying it's going to be about $24 an hour to operate. Think of the simplicity of not, checking the oil and worried about overheating cylinders and all those kinds of things, and weight and balance changes with fuel.
You can find Hangar Talk wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up after the break, we fly air cams in the Everglades.
And flying over Pittsburgh. We'll be right back.
Your plane is a valuable tool. With the Genesis Aerosystems STEC 3100 digital autopilot, you can rest assured you will arrive safely to your destination. The 3100 is the industry's most advanced autopilot for single and twin-engine aircraft, providing exceptional workload reduction, safety-enhancing capabilities such as straight and level mode and speed protection. To learn more, Visit our website today.
Welcome back. Tragedy in Utah as an airplane crashes in a canyon, killing 4 on board. Among them, former Major League Baseball pitcher Tyson Brummett. After baseball, he followed his love for aviation and became a CFI. The Cessna 172 was flying on July 3rd in the Wasatch Mountains east of Salt Lake City, Utah. Witnesses saw the airplane flying up a canyon and then, quote, corkscrewing a few times. The airplane crashed in steep terrain at an elevation of 8,500 feet. So Warren, you grew up in that part of the world, did a lot of flying out there. You know what it's like. You've been in that area, right?
Well, indeed. In fact, actually, he took off from the airport where I learned to fly. But I'll have to tell you, American Fork Canyon is very narrow. The terrain rises very quickly. The train would easily outclimb a 172 with 4 people on board at the density altitude that they were at. I mean, I'm guessing they probably would have been maybe 10,000 feet or so density altitude. So, I mean, a 172 at gross in the summer in Utah is really a marginal performer. So we can't speculate about what happened, but I think there's a pretty good indication of what likely happened.
Yeah, very unfortunate.
Well, as the months roll on while we deal with COVID and all the summer air shows have gone online, we're still getting some great videos sent in from you. This week we head to Pittsburgh. Pilot Alex Trevino takes us for a Magic Hour Magic Carpet tour of the city. And thank you, Alex, for sending in that great video.
Yeah, that's great. Go Steelers. And still no fishing trips to Canada, folks. The Canadian government has just extended coronavirus travel restrictions until the end of August. That means no non-essential travel into Canada. And if you meet one of the very few exceptions for essential travel, there's still a 2-week quarantine. And you have to wear a mask. Bust their rules, and it could be up to 6 months in prison or a $750,000 fine. We presume those are Canadian dollars. And that goes up to $1 million if you recklessly infect somebody else. Those Canadians, they're serious, eh?
Hey. Well, things are seriously tough in the airline business. This week, United Airlines said it may furlough almost half of its pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, and ticket agents this October. Airline traffic is down nearly 70%. Folks don't want to share a sealed tube with a cougher. So you'd think business aviation would be up. You'd be right. Lots of folks are looking to charter rather than buy a ticket for seat 23B, according to aerospace analyst Brian Foley.
There's many inquiries coming into charter companies, fractional companies, membership programs of newbies, those that never experienced private aviation before. And as a result, while many of those are looky-loos and they never really materialize, we're hearing from the field that, upwards of 50% of the customers lately have indeed been first-time users.
So you'd think that companies like Textron and Bombardier and Gulfstream would be cranking up production lines to make more jets for all of those new flyers. You'd be wrong. All those companies have laid off or furloughed large numbers of employees. Brian says recovery in the aircraft building business is a fair ways away.
I'd say those layoffs aren't so much a lack of demand as it is just the production lines being shut down for upwards of 2 or 3 months, and the inability for these manufacturers to make deliveries during that time and bring the cash in from final deliveries. So as such, they've had to right size and cut back on the number of employees. Will that go on forever? No, I'm hoping that this is the trough for as far as layoffs go. It won't be an immediate recovery because the traditional buyers today are still being a little bit cautious.
Brian says the existing fleet is underutilized, so a lot more people can fly without creating much demand for new aircraft. Interesting times indeed. Well, and it's also the end of the jumbo. We've told you earlier that the Airbus A380 was being taken out of service. Airbus isn't making any more of them. Now it appears that Boeing is going to stop making the 747. Now, Boeing isn't saying anything, but Reuters and Aviation Daily and other industry observers are reading the tea leaves and concluding that the end is near. Some suppliers are selling off equipment that they used to make 747 parts. Boeing financial statements no longer mention the 747. However, Boeing has enough 747s in the pipeline to keep the assembly line running until 2022 or 23. Sorry to see you go, Big Bird.
Yeah, that's a bummer. What a classic old airplane that is. Love seeing that thing fly in the skies. Well, this week we give you a throwback. We're looking back in the archives for stories that we maybe have forgotten. Here's one from 2012. AOPA Live's Paul Harrop took us along for the annual AirCam Owners Group gathering in the Everglades.
Welcome to the Everglades. Like me, you may have seen them from the air before, but seeing them in an AirCam gives you a whole new perspective.
Beautiful remote area. A lot of wilderness. Lots of areas where you can fly low. Nice area to fly in.
That's why AirCam designer Phil Lockwood held his annual AirCam Owners Fly-In at Everglades City. The small fishing and tourist village island is on the northwest edge of Everglades National Park.
It's a beautiful park, beautiful area. They call the area out here the area of 1,000 islands, and I can see why. I mean, there must be at least 1,000 islands.
The pilots that flew in got to see nearly every one of them up close and personal over 3 days this weekend. It's an annual tradition to gather and fly low and slow, and AirCams are the perfect machine for that mission.
I mean, our instrument panel is down low. It's not up, set up for IFR flight. So your view is the scenery and what's ahead of you, and not the instrument panel.
Being out in the open and being able to smell and hear everything that's going on around you in addition to seeing it. And because it has so much power, it's very safe to fly on a single engine, so flying low and slow is just not an issue. It's something that you do all the time in this airplane.
Ed McNeil has 2 air camps and uses one for research that takes him to lakes in the Adirondacks. But in the winter, he prefers trips like this one. Saturday morning, the group flew around Cape Sable, the southernmost tip of the Florida mainland. Phil says it's great to get like minds together.
We all like the same thing, so we all have this common bond, and it makes it makes it real interesting for us to get together and share our stories and adventures.
And what a place for the adventure.
Well, the Everglades is one of the most important freshwater incubators we have in the world, and in spite of all of the civilization that's around it and the fact that most of South Florida has been drained for sugarcane over the years, there's still enough of the Everglades left that it probably is sustainable.
In the Everglades, Paul Harrop, AOPA Live.
Now, it should be noted, all the low flying in that video was done outside the national park. We found some real gems in the archives. We'll dust a few of them off from time to time and let you enjoy them once again. That's our program for this week. Nice to be back in the studio, sort of.
Well, yes, Tom. Some of us are still in home isolation, but we're still doing the show.
Right.
And by the way, if you have any thoughts about our show, we'd love to hear from you. The address is there on your screen. And we'll see you back maybe in the studio or maybe here, who knows, next week.
My name's Tom Rao. I've got about 18,000 hours total time as a pilot. There's certain things that you can see with an onboard radar, and there's certain things you can't see. And the nice thing about SiriusXM's weather product is that it adds another layer of safety, which really plays into the aeronautical decision-making process for me. It allows me to get a more strategic, big picture when I'm going to go 700 or 800 miles. Just facilitates decision-making on a long-range spectrum. The SiriusXM weather features that I engage in the airplane, of course there's a selection. The wind feature and the ability to work out route changes with center to take advantage of the wind is sort of a carryover from my airline days or in the Navy when we always felt like we didn't have enough gas. Being able to make gas literally by shortening its segment length, the wind feature it's invaluable. The number of dollars saved as a result, I just don't think I can calculate it.